Welcome everyone. This is our third event in our new year-long series of transition talks here at Perkins School for the Blind. We're just so very grateful for the opportunity to connect with everyone this evening and appreciative that you've taken time out of your busy lives to be here and join us and talk about transition. Before I introduce our facilitators this evening, I just wanted to give everyone a little bit of background about just who we are and kind of what we do. We're just so very fortunate at Perkins to have this incredible team of experts that specialize in transition, and we all work together to support young people and their families as they're preparing for their next steps. We do this through a real range of services and supports. We offer direct service programs for young people. We have a few new really exciting innovative programs that are launching this year. I'd encourage you to explore, and we can share links for those in the chat. Our team's developed this growing collection of resources, and we're creating networking opportunities for caregivers to connect with one another, both virtually and in person for those who are local. So we're just really excited to be kind of building that community. And most recently, just thrilled to announce new opportunities to receive individual kind of one-on-one transition counseling services for families. We're piloting this service at no cost, and just looking to learn more about, the needs of the families that we serve, and just looking forward to providing guidance and referrals to get families connected with appropriate services and resources. So again, we can kind of provide links to all of these different things, but our overarching goal is to just help make this process less daunting for students and families across the country. We know the process can quickly become kind of overwhelmingly complex, and just looking to connect families with the resources that they need so that they don't have to navigate this process alone. So, again, thank you so much for joining us, for joining our growing transition community. We're really looking forward to diving in to our discussion this evening about housing and just getting to know everyone as the year progresses. So with that, I will pass it over to Phelan, and Anne will introduce herself, and also our incredible guest speaker this evening, Blanton, and they'll both be leading our conversation. So thank you. Anne?
Thank you. And Janine, you could pop up with the slides. I want to thank you all for being here and echo all of the sentiment that Alex shared. It's so important we all come together. We all have a common goal to seek information, gain knowledge in areas that are pretty extremely daunting, as Alex said. And I just want to really congratulate you and pat yourselves on the back for being here today, because we're here to learn. And we're here to share as a community, all in the same boat, but with different experiences. So today we are talking about how to access public benefits in housing. There's so many aspects and layers to housing, but tonight I really wanted to introduce you to Pam Blanton, who I'll introduce you to in a little bit. I'm still learning about transition. 15 years in this position of a transition specialist. Every webinar I attend, every conversation with you, working with my colleagues, with my students, self-advocates, I'm still learning. And a webinar that I attended by Pam was just really insightful. And Pam really can speak to a national audience, so we do have people from all over the country. And if you are from outside New England or the tri-state area, if you wouldn't mind putting in the chat box what state you're from, or if you're from another country, that would be really great, because it gives me data and information on how to help you. If you could, we can go to the next slide. Thank you. If you could, try to absorb something from this that's a nugget of gold, one or two aspects of the learning. It would be really difficult to take everything away tonight, but if you can grasp something that really means something to you, or something you can start to work with. And I do want you to know, as Alex said, we do provide consultation support. So if after this webinar you find it's helpful, but you would like to continue the conversation with me or anyone else on our program at the Transition Center at Perkins, we're here for you, so we can let you know how to contact us. I want to welcome the professionals that are here, the self-advocates that are here, and the parents and caregivers. So thank you. Next slide, please. So tonight we're talking about how to access public benefits and shared living. However, I do think it's really important to talk about the different housing models so we're pretty clear, because some of you are coming into this without really having any understanding or experience on what it's about and to talk about housing. So we'll talk about that. So next slide, please. So supported independent living is it's something that's really out there, that people come together, peers are living together. They may be familiar or not know each other at all. Sometimes there's 24-hour support, maybe an overnight person, but these individuals in these homes will go out to work during the day or might go to a community-based day programming. The typical supports are in ADLs, budgeting, meal preparation, problem solving, and perhaps transportation. And these communities are all over the country, and some of them are privately funded through families. Benefits can provide some supports to pay for these programs. And also, if some parents have funding through their local Department of Developmental Disability, and they're using their own monies through a budget, then they can apply some of the monies towards that. And that's called self-directed. It's a new fundamental change in how the Department of Disabilities across the country are providing funding mechanisms which allow families to actually create their own budgets. So that's a very deeper dive. And I can say to you that many states, including Massachusetts, have many webinars on self-direction. And if you'd like to learn more about that tonight, please email me and I can make a conversation with you and point you in the right direction. Next slide, please. So group homes are a model that provides 24/7 support. And these are typically for individuals who have complex needs, perhaps in behavioral or medical, and they need more oversight in all aspects of daily living. The individuals in group homes typically go to community-based day programming or perhaps some supported employment. And these models are the ones that are most often funded by the Department of Developmental Disabilities. However, it's the highest level of need that are determined to be eligible for group homes. So it's not a given that if you're interested in this model that you will get funding for it. All right, next slide. Cooperative living is really interesting. I'm familiar with a few models in Massachusetts that utilize this model, and how it looks is families get together and buy a property, and they hire a service provider that will oversee the property and the management of the property, and also the supports for the individuals living in the community. So for instance, in Massachusetts, there's a couple. There's 3 families in Hyannis that bought a beautiful property, and 3 of the students who are connected to the families live there, and they invited 5 other individuals. There's also a program in Massachusetts called Specialized Housing, and they have several homes throughout the greater Boston Metro West area, and families have purchased properties and they live together, and Specialized Housing manages the property. So that's cooperative living. Next slide, please. Adult family care, it's also been called adult foster care, but I think family care sounds a bit nicer. This is a model of where an individual will live with a caregiver. It can be a family member. It cannot be a legal guardian or a spouse. And money is designated to the caregiver to provide the supports for this individual. How this is determined is agencies such as Kennedy Donovan and Nomatak and some other agencies will do an assessment to determine eligibility, and it's paid by Medicaid. So this is an important type of housing that might be available for some people. And the next slide. Okay, so before we jump into this, I wanted to share with you, I've been privileged to work with programs across the country, housing communities, independent living communities, inclusive housing communities, and they're everywhere, all over the United States. And I'd like to talk about a couple of them and familiarize you with some of them so that you're aware. There are too many for me to really speak to, but I'd like you to at least explore some of them. One of them is called First Place. It's in Phoenix, Arizona, and it was started by Denise Resnick. And I must say, many of the housing communities have been started by families, particularly moms. And I've been connected to some amazing people who have created inclusive housing opportunities. First Place is unique. I call Denise Resnick the Bill Gates of housing. By the way, Phoenix is one of the most autistic-friendly cities in the country, arguably so. And it's definitely a model to look at. Another one that's incredible, started by Jillian Copeland, is Main Street in Rockville, Maryland. And it's an inclusive housing community. It's open to all. It's a nonprofit, and it's just an amazing community. Casa de Ama is in Dade County. I think that's Dade County, Miami, and Kendall, actually, and they just broke ground, and it's another great community. And last but not least, there's a couple in our resource page, but the Kelsey in California. So these are just a few. And why I highlight these is no particular reason, except I want you to understand that there are many people that are creating housing opportunities. So with that said, I'm really excited to introduce Jamie Martins and Pam Blanton from Partners for Housing, who will take over the webinar and talk a little bit more about shared living. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Anne, and welcome everyone. Thanks for having me here today. So shared living, first of all, I want to start by saying one of the biggest challenges with housing is the nomenclature used across the nation in different states. So you might hear something called adult family care, or adult in one state, it might be called an adult family home in another. Some states call group homes one thing and another, and have a different definition in another state. So there's work, and Denise Resnick was involved with it. Also, Autism Housing Network was involved with trying to come up with common nomenclature across the nation so we can all speak the same language. So I just say that as we start so that you know that all states don't use the same definitions. So shared living, and this is part of the new nomenclature document that you'll find on the Autism Housing Network website. Shared living is a family-driven housing model where, you know, people live together to share housing and support services. And so this is one where families access all the benefits, help their loved one access all the benefits that they're eligible for, and then they find compatible roommates and other families that they want to partner with, and they create a home together. So like I said, shared living is a family-driven housing model. We've helped families set up 61 shared living homes in the last 8 or 9 years, serving 135 people with disabilities. It's a really unique housing model that meets the needs of the individuals who are living in the home. And it gives families a lot of choice over roommates, choice over location, and choice over caregivers. But it also takes a lot of work. So, you know, it takes a lot of work for families to get it set up. But once it's up and running, it's a really beautiful housing solution. And it serves people all across the board with needs. So we have one woman who uses a wheelchair and has pretty significant needs. She has 2 live-in caregivers. You know, we have people, you know, 3 guys with Down syndrome that go to work every day, and they have a living caregiver that makes sure that they get healthy meals and get out with their coat when they need it and get to all their activities on time. So, you know, the model is really designed by families for their loved ones to meet the unique needs of their loved ones. So when we help families set up a shared living home, we start by helping them answer 3 critical questions. What does my loved one need to live outside of our family home? Who will they live with? And how do we afford it? So at Partners for Housing, we help families answer those questions. We have a benefits and housing review. It's an online questionnaire that families complete. Once they complete and submit it, we meet with them, consult with them for an hour via Zoom, and we help make sure they have all the benefits that they're eligible. And when we're looking at benefits, we want to make sure that everybody has the full amount of SSI. We see a lot of people coming in with reduced SSI. So we help you make sure that your loved one has the full amount of SSI. We look at make sure everybody has food benefits. We talk a lot about Section 8. Families, Section 8, if there's one little nugget, Anne said, look for a nugget. If there's a nugget here, I would say to you, Section 8 is a very important nugget that really helps make housing affordable and financially sustainable long-term. A lot of people will say, our housing authority hasn't opened their Section 8 wait list in 10 years. The lists are years and years long. But let me tell you something. We have in the Seattle area, we have a really unique special Section 8 program. It's actually the best disability voucher program in the nation, and I've been working with it since the late 90s. So we know how to help families get your loved one on Section 8 wait lists and how to complete the paperwork. So we'll talk a little bit more about that, but Section 8 is a real important piece. So our residential assessment helps people first by exploring their housing vision, making sure they have the benefits they're eligible for. Then for people who are interested, we have a roommate matching pool, an online platform where families can search for compatible roommates and compatible families, because having the families be compatible is equally as important as having the roommates be compatible, because they're going to work together to help set up the home. So we have an online roommate matching pool. Currently, we have people from primarily Washington, because that's where we are now, but we also have people in Arizona, New York, Georgia, Connecticut. I'm missing some, Jamie. New Jersey. Anyway, other states. So we're expanding our roommate pool nationally. And then once families find their partners and they're ready to go set up a shared living home, we also offer services to help lead families through the process of doing that work. And so we have a short video. I think it speaks a lot to what we do. Is it okay, Anne, if we show that now?
Before we started working with Partners for Housing, I didn't feel like there were very many options. I think we thought Troy would be living at home forever.
We just didn't have the direction. Partners for Housing gave us a path forward.
Because I couldn't imagine anything worse than her having lived with us all her life, losing her parents, and then having all of that disrupted. So we really wanted her to move out while we were still alive and while we could support that transition.
When we found Partners for Housing, they immediately stepped in and kind of embraced us as a family.
Families worry about who will care for their loved one when they're no longer able, and about the costs of housing and care. They worry about loneliness and isolation. It can seem impossible to make a realistic, achievable plan for the future.
The biggest worry for a parent is that your child is going to grow up into adulthood and not have community.
My neighbor has one of those.
Gaining access to the benefits your loved one is eligible for can be very challenging. There are so many government agencies and social service programs. It's hard for families to find the best solution.
It's a complicated system, right? And there's a lot of emotion attached to it as well. So when you're in an emotional state, you're not always at your most rational, or you don't always think clearly, and trying to figure out the systems by yourself is, you can do it, it's just really difficult and time consuming, and there's a lot of bumps along the way.
Partners for Housing helps families maximize their benefits and create housing solutions that meet the unique needs of their loved ones. The first step is to complete the residential assessment. This assessment will identify gaps in your loved one's benefits and services and help clarify your family's vision for the future.
And when we connected with Partners for Housing and started going through the residential assessment, we discovered layers of services that could be available if we knew how to tap into them.
The residential assessment includes a comprehensive review to ensure your loved one has all the benefits and services that they're eligible for, a follow-up consultation to identify the steps you can take now to prepare for the future, and assistance navigating the application process for Section 8 housing vouchers and other programs.
So Partners for Housing allowed us to know how important Section 8 was, the process of getting into Section 8. Whenever you work with federal and state and county government, it is a bureaucracy.
The residential assessment is an online questionnaire that you can begin today and complete at your own pace.
My first impression of the residential assessment was its absolute thoroughness. It covers so many aspects of my daughter's life. It was inspiring, it gave us courage, it gave us hope, it gave us energy to take the necessary steps to move through the process.
Partners for Housing offers additional services to help families create a shared living home. Shared living is when people with disabilities live together to share the cost of housing and services. Our roommate matching pool helps you find compatible roommates and like-minded families with similar housing goals. Our shared living development services guides families through the process of realizing their vision of a safe, supported, and resilient housing solution.
We wanted something that we could set up that would repeat itself and be able to be lasting long after we're gone.
My favorite is living with these two and the independence this has given me.
Completing a residential assessment is the first step toward identifying the resources that can make your family's unique housing goals achievable. Partners for Housing will help you with advice, recommendations, and a list of steps that you can take to prepare for the future.
Start early, and in fact, it's never too early to start.
Yeah, start the process now. My wife and I put it off for years and years and years until my wife passed away. You know, it's like they say, the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago, and the second best time is today.
And she's grown in ways we didn't expect and in ways we did expect, and we're just really proud.
When we go out to see our boyfriends, we also see movies, and we would also go bowling.
So I live like 5 minutes away from my parents, so that's really nice actually.
We are actually more engaged with each other living apart. And now when he comes home on weekends that Beth is off, we play cards. There's much more social interaction between us and Jeremy, which is very delightful.
Visit www.partnersforhousing.com for more information. Take the first step toward their journey home for you, your loved one, and your entire family.
Are you happy here?
Yes.
Powell?
Yes.
Okay, well, that'll give you a little idea of what we do at Partners for Housing. Is there a next slide that I need to follow? Oh, the timeline. Okay, so a lot of people ask, you know, how long does it take to create a housing solution? Next slide. And so we've created this slide to help you think about it. I always tell family, you know, to start early and that the process can take 2 to 5 years or more. When we talk about 2 to 5 years, the residential assessment is an online questionnaire that you can purchase. It's delivered directly to you. You can complete it, and once you submit it, within 3 days, we set up a consultation to talk about benefits. So that can happen pretty quickly. If you're interested in the roommate matching pool, it can take time to find compatible roommates, right? You want compatible roommates, but you also need the families to be compatible. And so, I really encourage people to spend even a year getting to know each other, a lot of regular visits, so that your family members, the roommates, can get to know each other, but that the families can get to know each other too. Another reason I say that is, sometimes families get really excited. We had a family once earlier in the earlier days who already had a house that they wanted to use. They had a caregiver. All they needed with a roommate. They found somebody, and within 4 months, they moved in together. And the guys became best friends. They had a really great time together. But the parents really did not share vision and values, and it ended up not working out. And so the one young man had to go back home, and it was disturbing for him, and he didn't understand why. So spending that time to make sure it's a good match is important. So our shared living development services, when we start walking families through the steps to set up a shared living home, typically takes about a year. It can take longer, and some families want it to take longer, and that's fine. We don't like to hurry that process because there's a lot of learning between the families when they're creating this home together. And so we say about a year or longer there. And then Section 8 vouchers, we're going to talk more about Section 8 vouchers. It can take some time to get a voucher, but I'll tell you, this year, Jamie, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe there's about 8 people that have gotten a voucher and put it in place in less than 8 months. And so we're going to tell you how to do that, how to start getting on Section 8 wait lists. And maybe I'll just do that right now. Can you show me the next slide again, please? See if that's okay. How do we get Section 8? There we go. Perfect. So there's an amazing website out there. It's called affordablehousingonline.com. Affordablehousingonline.com. This is an organization that looks all across the nation for open Section 8 wait lists. Now we're talking about Section 8 housing choice vouchers, which means it's a voucher that the individual gets in their hand, and they can rent from any private market landlord. There's different kinds of Section 8. Sometimes Section 8 is tied to a property so that you can benefit from reduced rent while you're living in that particular place. But we like to help people get the vouchers because they're really like gold. So every week, the Affordable Housing Online updates their list of open Section 8 lists. And what many people don't know is that you can apply to lists all over the nation. Typically, when you get a voucher, you have to live in that housing authority's jurisdiction for 1 year. But if you're a person with a disability, you can request reasonable accommodation to port your voucher early. And so you can get a voucher and immediately transfer it to your local housing authority, which most people don't know about. And we help you do that. So we can help you with the information to do that. So Section 8, what are some of the things you can do with Section 8? Well, when a person has Section 8, they pay 30% of their income approximately toward rent, and the housing authority pays the rest up to a limit set by HUD. When you have Section 8, if you're a person with a disability, you can request reasonable accommodation for a live-in caregiver, and the housing authority will pay the rent for the caregiver, not counting the caregiver's income. So it would be the the individual with a disability could get a 2-bedroom voucher and pay only 30% of their income for that 2-bedroom voucher. Really an amazing way to start putting together a nice compensation package for a caregiver when all housing related costs are included in that. Also, if a person with a disability has a voucher and they have a couple friends that they want to live with, that person can add other people to their vouchers who have disabilities, because unrelated people with disabilities meet the Section 8 definition of family. So you can have one person who has a voucher and they can add their roommates to the voucher and everybody can benefit from reduced rents. Just a hugely valuable subsidy. And there's a lot of things you can do with Section 8 if you're a person with disabilities through reasonable accommodation requests that other people without disabilities can't do. So one of the things is, you typically cannot rent from a relative with Section 8, but if you're a person with disabilities, you can request reasonable accommodation to rent from a relative. And we've helped literally since the late 90s, I've helped hundreds of people with this process, and many have gone through the process of renting from a relative. Let's see. What else about Section 8? Just a lot of things that you can do.
This is Alex LaVoie. I know you asked me to jump in if there were
Sure,
questions in the chat.
Okay.
Is now an okay time to pause,
Absolutely.
or would you prefer to wait? Okay.
Nope.
Let's see. Anne has been kind of answering a few. Another is, how often are reasonable accommodations denied?
Okay, so reasonable accommodations are all approved on a case-by-case basis. So it's really important that you know how to write the requests and that it relates to the person with disabilities. We don't get many denied because we've been doing this for a long time and we know how to write those. You have to write the request related to the person's disability and needs. So it's a certain way you need to write them. As far as renting from a relative, I think that in the last 23 years, we've had 2 denied and we appealed them and they won. So you just have to know how to write them.
Wow. Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, let me just correct one more thing too. When I say you can rent from a relative, most housing authorities will not let you rent from a relative that you live with. So if you have a son or daughter that's living in your family home, you couldn't get a voucher and have them rent their bedroom from you. It would need to be a separate unit from where the owner lives. Okay. That helps.
Okay, great. Thank you. There's another question just about kind of costs and how you charge for your services. I don't know if you wanted to send something afterwards.
Sure. And all of this information, all of our fees are on our website. So the information is there. We charge $500 for our benefits and housing review, our first step, which includes the residential assessment, the review of services, the follow-up consultation, and access to our roommate matching pool. So that's all included for $500. Our shared living development services are separate, and you'll find those fees on our website. It's based on the number of families that are involved in the group. And then we also offer consulting services for families who have, we really do consult all of the nation with Section 8, by the hour for families who want it by packages. All of that you'll find on our website.
Wonderful. Thank you. There's lots of questions coming in. I know, Anne, you're answering a few, so jump in if you've answered these. But is there any risk that the Section 8 program might ever end?
There's always that risk because nothing's guaranteed. I have never seen a person since 1998 lose a voucher that has had it taken from them without cause. Let's put it that way. So yeah.
To jump in, Pam,
okay.
So Rama asked a really great question. I've attended so many Section 8 workshops that you'd think I'd have the expertise that you have, Pam, but I'm glad you're tag teaming. But Rama, something that you said is really important. So when you do put your name on the waiting list, first of all, your adult child should be with you. Their presence in the housing authority in a visual way is really important. And someone from the Wareham Housing Authority once said, you should bring your adult child to the office every year with a box of donuts to say, here I am again, where am I on that voucher list? Because there might be a voucher that comes up and, they have a visual of, oh yeah, we have this young man that's been coming in, he's really wanting a voucher. So yeah, if you applied 3 years ago, you should be checking every single year. Pam, do you have any other suggestions about that?
Well, they're supposed to take people off the list in the order that they were put on. But it is very good idea to continue to check with them to make sure they have all your current information and to find out where you are on the list. And the families that we work with that are applying all over the nation, they can't, they might go put their name on 80 lists across the nation and they're not living near there, so that they won't be able to go in. But if you have a housing authority near you, a great idea to do that. Always making sure that the housing authority has your current information. And, when you're applying when you go onto affordable housing online and you look at open lists, there's about 10 questions or 12 questions that they're going to ask you. Who is the head of household? What is their income? Other household members? One thing that's important for all of you to know is that, once your family member turns 18, they're an adult. And so they're the head of their own household. So when you fill out these applications, you're going to fill them out with just your loved ones, information, not your whole household income, right? These are things we talk about too. We go through the details of how to apply for those lists. But what happens is we tell people spend 15 minutes a week and put your name on all the open lists. They start to auto-populate, right? So it doesn't take that long. And then pretty soon you're going to get a notice that says, hey, here your names come to the top of the list. There's also things that you can do in preparation to give your family member priority. So there's preferences. So if you're an extremely low income person, you get a preference. If you're a person with a disability, you get a preference. If you're rent burdened, you get a preference. So these are things you can do in advance to make sure that your loved one's application will rise to the top.
Perfect. Thank you for answering all of these questions, Pam. I think there are a few more in the chat, but I'm going to suggest maybe if we can continue on, and then as we pass it back over to Anne and our team, Pam, maybe you can kind of scan the chat and answer what you can. And if your question isn't answered this evening, please reach out and we'll be available after the meeting to ensure that everyone's questions get answered. Does that sound like an okay plan?
Sounds good.
All right, great.
Okay, questions about shared living. So when families are setting up a shared living home, first they're finding all the right partners. And then always the biggest question is, how do we find caregivers? And that is really the biggest challenge in every housing model. And all across the nation there's a shortage of caregivers, and you guys all know that. So how do you find caregivers? Well, what you need to do is you first need to put together a nice compensation package that has enough time off so that the people stay fresh. So if you have a job that pays well and they have enough time off, then you're going to be able to recruit and retain good people. So that is something we help you do. We think about to help you talk about what's a reasonable amount to pay for a caregiver. And what does that compensation package look like? So that's something that really helps families find and recruit caregivers. Now, we don't recruit caregivers, but we help families put together the compensation packages and write job descriptions and put together flyers, then they're typically recruiting these caregivers through their network. When they find the right caregiver, all of our caregivers work through a home care agency for the individual's Medicaid funded community first choice, or the service hours they get through the state. So the agency then acts as the employer of record, and the funding comes from the state through the agency to the caregiver. How do we decide who pays for what in a shared living home? So part of what we do is work with families on setting up household budgets where everything is equitably divided for the house. So we help families decide we help them figure out the budgets for the house. And then in shared living, what happens when the parent passes or can no longer take the lead? Very good question, because this is a model. Ultimately, when it's set up, the caregiver is managing the day-to-day and the parents are providing the oversight. Ultimately, though, we all know caregivers come and go over time. And so there are times when you're going to have to recruit a new caregiver. We also, in the process of the benefits and housing review early on, we encourage families to start thinking about who's going to step into your shoes when you're no longer able. And whoever that is, if it's a sibling, if it's a friend, if it's a cousin, if it's a professional guardianship service, if the home is already set up, when something happens, the next person can step in. And they're not alone. The structure is there, and they have a network of families that they're already working with. So there's a lot more work. We all know there's a lot more work to do around housing across the nation. I know in Washington State, and I know in other states, there are organizations looking at who can take over this role of, parent oversight when we're no longer here. We're still working on that piece. Next slide. Okay, there we are, back to Q&A. Is there any more questions or?
It was a question about Section 8, and if the person is not their own guardian, are they still able to get on the Section 8 housing list?
Yes, absolutely. So we have a lot of guardians that are applying on behalf of their family member with a disability. So usually you just submit a guardianship letter when you're submitting all the paperwork to prove you have the right to sign that.
There was a question about pay for the caregivers. I think you touched on this, and Anne talked about some of the different models, but anything
Sure
that you can.
Yeah, so what does that cost? So in Washington, and every state is different with their housing costs, and we're in one of the highest housing costs in the nation in the Seattle area. But our caregivers, they're making about $4,500 a month, and that's tax-free for a live-in caregiver. They also get all their housing related costs covered. They typically get 20 hours off Monday through Friday and every other weekend. So families find different ways to fill that gap. Sometimes people are off to work, or they can be left home alone. If they need 24/7, then they have other caregivers come in, or they might have 2 live-in caregivers. So there's different ways of putting together those, the important thing is getting all the benefits that your family member is eligible for early while they're living at home will help you, because in the end, the parents are going to private pay for the difference between what you have and what you need or want, right? And everybody has different lifestyle preferences. So, some of our houses that we've helped families set up do have a private pay component, and others do not. So it just depends on on a number of factors. And the other thing is, every single one of the 61 homes we've done is very unique, just like all of our homes are unique, right, to the people who are living together. And we do have caregiver agreements where we spell all of this out and the caregiver knows exactly, you know, what the agreement is, and the families all sign it prior to the caregiver moving in. I just saw that caregiver question come across, so thought I'd answer that.
Thank you. I'm seeing, I think, only one more earlier in the chat that I don't know that we answered. If you have full guardianship, is an 18-year-old, excuse me, still considered head of household? And there was 2 people that had that.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
You know, I think we have time for 1 or 2 more. If anybody wants to come off mute and ask Pam any questions. There's one more in the chat. Are the homes that parents set up? These homes that parents set up, or does Partner First Housing?
Yeah, so we lead families through a process of setting up the home. So, you know, all of those things that we talked about, and it's all listed on our website too, all the different things that we help them do. Once the home is set up and the caregiver moves in and the roommates move in, then we have a 6-month facilitated review process where we have 3 meetings during that 6-month period between the caregiver and the families and the roommates to be sure that everything is launching in a healthy way, that communication is working, that the caregiver has the tools they need. And then after the 3rd facilitated review, we're out, and it's the families managing, or the caregiver managing the day-to-day and the parents providing the oversight. Oftentimes though, caregivers come and go, roommates might come and go, families might come back to us and say, hey, can you help us onboard a new caregiver? Can you help us, you know, onboard a new roommate? And we'll offer that services.
There's Diana had her hand raised.
Okay.
I can't see you, Diana, but I wanted to give you a chance to go.
I'm sorry, I don't have my video on, but I'm going back to the guardianship question, because my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, guardianship, once a young person or any person gives away or does somebody else's guardianship over them, housing will not be under their control. So did you say that it was under their control? Because that's not my understanding.
No, I didn't. What I meant to say, if I did, I'm sorry, but what I meant to say is, I thought the question was, if a person is 18 and they have guardianship, are they still the head of their own household? And for purposes of applying for benefits, the answer is yes.
What about purposes of making decisions?
But then the guardianship, it's the guardianship, and I'm not going to, I'll let you check with your attorney, but yeah, the family does have, the guardian has the say over what they're doing, right? But the individual, for purposes of applying for benefits, is the head of their own household. I hope that helps.
No, it does help. And what about supported decision making? Would that be very different?
You know what, in shared living, it doesn't matter which model, if a person has guardian or supported decision making. Washington in 2023 moved to supported decision making, and we've worked with families who have guardianship, individuals who have guardianship, and those who do not.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Pam, let's end with a question from Caroline, who has her hand raised. And then if others have questions, please reach out to us after the presentation, and we'll be happy to talk more with you.
Hi, everyone. Hi, and well, Anne Phelan may know this answer already, and you guys may have touched on it. So this whole setup. So I'm very intrigued with it, and I don't know if it's something similar. Here in my daughter goes to Riverview, who Anne knows, and Phelan knows, and but we live in New Jersey, so. You know, when this is all done and up there. So anyway, we have something called United Way. Are you something similar like United Way?
I can speak to that, Pam. So you're talking about the Bergen County United Way in New Jersey, which is an amazing agency, and they are creating some housing opportunities, and that's very different. Pam's services are and her resources are around accessing public benefits. What Bergen County United Way is doing in New Jersey is they're creating, I forgot the name of the community, it begins with a C, but they're creating housing communities. But if you So your adult child, if your adult child's at a Riverview school or at a Perkins school or in a residential community,
Okay.
that resource knows a lot about the level of need and supports that your adult child will need. However, if your child is coming from a high school and is transitioning to adult services and you're really not sure where they fit, Pam's services are really key because her assessment will help you understand the level of support needed and the other key aspects so you can identify what will be the right housing model. So you're in really good hands with United Way at Bergen County. I'd work with them. I have lots of amazing resources in New Jersey, so definitely reach out to me.
Okay. All right. And then I had another question. Sorry. Just something, and it just flew out of my head. Sorry. You guys have really, it's been great listening to you. So I'll review it again. But thank you.
So I'll just say too that I know that Anne has our contact information on the resource list, and would really encourage all of you to sign up for our email list too. If you're interested in learning more, we share some really valuable information also through our email list. And if there's questions that you didn't get answered today regarding Section 8 or shared living, I think that Anne has our email on my email on the.
Thank you, Pam.
Thank you.
Definitely. Janine, I think we can pop to the next slide. I just wanted to kind of go over the resources a little bit. So obviously we have Pam and Pam's website here. And if you just click their hyperlinks. For Massachusetts, if you are from Massachusetts, I'm sure you've attended some of Kathy Boyle's webinars, Autism Housing Pathways. She's a similar expert around everything to do with housing. I did put in a couple of links to learn a little bit about the housing authorities in New Jersey. Parents with a Plan, a former Riverview parent, is creating some inclusive housing opportunities. So for my New Jersey attendees tonight, you definitely want to click on that one. We have the Perkins Transition Center, some great resources on community participation and independent living to look at. Some websites on waivers. And it's really important to understand the Americans with Disabilities Act. And really, your adult children should be self-advocates around understanding their rights around accommodations, accessibility, because you're moving from IDEA to ADA, and there's a lot in there embedded around housing. And last but not least, Pam and I agree, the gold nugget of tonight, the takeaway is get on the affordable housing list. It's amazing. I get notifications, Pam, I think every day, and they're opening up vouchers and opportunities for housing all across the country. So it's pretty cool to see. I really like looking at it. So there's that gold nugget from me. Next slide, please. And so we're going to close, Alex, I guess, and transition to your introduction to the next part of our program. Before we do, I just want to thank Pam. Thank you so much for being here. I know people will be reaching out to you, and get on Pam's mailing list because she does these webinars. I attended one for free, and that's how I brought her here. So thank you, Pam.
Yeah, thanks, Anne. We'll have Robin just hop on and talk about an upcoming course. And then Anne, if you can just close with just spotlighting what's up next for our February workshop, that'd be great.
Stay on, everybody. You've got a little bit more tidbits to share.
2 more minutes. Robin, you want to jump in?
Yeah, absolutely. And I will be brief. Let me make sure I'm being heard. My name is Robin. I represent Perkins e-learning on this call tonight. We provide professional development opportunities for educators of students with visual impairments and multiple disabilities. And I asked the transition team for some time to make sure families know that you are also all very welcome in the courses that we offer. Our winter course, Planning Transition for Students with Visual Impairments and Multiple Disabilities, may be of interest to you or the teams that you work with. Wherever you are right now along your own timeline, if this transition series has had you looking for a structured kind of learning approach, such as ours, this might work for you. It is a 5-week course. It begins January 22nd. And though it is an online course, it does not meet live. though you will be part of an interactive group of 25 participants who are led by Betsy McGinnity, who began her career at Perkins in the 1980s as the coordinator of vocational services in our renowned deaf-blind program. What I'd like to leave you with tonight is an email where you can reach me and a couple of talking points just to help you think. I know you've taken in a lot tonight, so I don't want to give you a new topic. I just want to give you this slide to look at and a way to reach out to us. As I said, there are no live meeting dates. Everyone is welcome. And we want families to know that you can share your login. These are professional development courses, and so sometimes the price can be a little steep for a family. But once you've purchased it, you have all of the information that's there, the recorded lectures, participating in the discussions. There are assignments if you'd like to try some of the activities to see how prepared you are. But if you're not earning credits, you don't need to worry about your grades. And that way you can sit down together, or you can say, oh, I watched the lecture last night. I think that Martha would really benefit from us sitting and watching it together. Our courses are accessible wherever you have the internet. And if you are a professional or you're talking with some of your team members, they can earn professional development credits up to 25 contact hours, and with an option of adding 2 graduate credits if that works for them. So I'm going to paste my email address again into the chat. It's perkins.elearning@perkins.org. And let's just start a conversation. If this has sparked any interest at all for you, you'd like to come back and talk about it later, email me at your convenience, and I can answer everything from how does online learning work to is this the right course for me and my family where we are right now? And we can talk to you about how to get registered. Class begins on the 22nd. Thank you so much. This has been really a valuable opportunity to get our word out to you as well.
And last but not least, really thank you for sharing space tonight and being here. And the next event is February 6th. I'm super excited about this. Another workshop I attended was by Jane Brown from College Autism Spectrum. And she is an incredible, wise woman who has a lot to say about inclusive college. And if you have an adult child who has that dream for their future, it is attainable. There's over 350 non-credit inclusive college programs all across the country, plus other types of college programs. So I do encourage you to participate February 6th. And because you came to this workshop, I believe, Janine, they will get automatically notified about the next workshop. Is that correct? Correct. Okay, cool. And please share with people. We had 73 people at the height of the workshop, and that just means so much to our team. Thank you so much. And here's our contact information. It'll be in the slide. Have a great night, everyone.